Hi, welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm the founder of the Bobby White Foundation, along with my co-host.
Good morning. It's Bonnie Snyder.
Bonnie, you match our painting.
I do. It was not. This was totally unintentional. Totally unintentional.
Oh, I think that is so cool, though.
And every time I look at this picture, I'm like, I love it. I love it. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just gonna have to bid on this because it matches the decor in my home. I have a very nautical theme throughout my house.
Oh, cool.
But in the area where I have Patrick, where Patrick is, he had a picture that was a ocean wave, and it's this same kind of print. The color scheme is a little different, and I was like, oh my gosh, how nice would this picture be next to Patrick's wave? So hey folks, start bidding.
You're gonna get there. Maybe a bidding war.
Some competition going on.
Well, and speaking of this painting, the title of it is "Hope Rains Down," and the piece is it's an original flow. They call it fluid art, flow acrylic. It was donated by a local artist here, Carol T. Smith, and the colors are for the colors for suicide prevention, which is the teal and the purple, and I think she titled it just perfectly, And it's a 20 by 20 canvas on gallery bars, which means the stretcher bars are like 2 inches thick, so you don't really need to put a frame on it. I would like you to do that because that's what I do, but it doesn't need it. So anyways, Carol Smith, she lives here in Trinity, and she, I'm going to read a little bit of her bio so you get kind of an idea who the artist is. I think it's always interesting to know. And we're doing this at the beginning of the show because if we don't, there's so many things that I end up forgetting once we get into the core of what we do, so things are going to be kind of squirrely here. But Carol lives in Trinity, Florida. Creativity has always been in her nature, but her real passion for painting started just a few years ago. After taking a watercolor class, she realized how much she loved the mix of paint and water to achieve softer, bold colors. And watercolor painting is one of the hardest of the medians to learn and pick up. It just is. But she discovered fluid acrylic abstract painting on canvas, and she loved the unpredictability of the final painting. And you probably see a lot. Fluid painting is really becoming a big thing right now, and I'm going to try it myself here real shortly. But she lives close to the Gulf of Mexico. The tropical birds, beach, sun, ocean, and the waves, and their movement often inspire the colors and subjects she uses in her artwork. She also loves taking unwanted furniture pieces and upcycling them to gorgeous painted pieces that anyone would love to have in their home. Collaborating with clients on colors and designs to fit their decor is always a fun process for her. She says here, so I guess you can say I spend my life waiting for paint to dry, and she loves it.
And what's interesting, how she titled it, that she does not spell rain.
Right.
Like rain.
Rain. R-A-I-E-N.
Yeah.
R-A-I-N-S. Yeah.
Yeah, it is REIGNS.
Right.
Which I thought was, hope, and then that particular spelling of rain down, I felt really captured, not only, well, of course, the spirit of the painting, but it also captures what, we aspire as the message, when we do this show.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was, when she brought it over, I was in awe. I was like, oh my God. And sometimes I get emotional at weird times, and this was like one of those. I was like, I'm standing in the driveway, don't lose it.
And for me, I mean, looking at the piece, I'm drawn to the colors. Blue's my favorite color. And so, I'm like, yeah, I find myself, last week when you brought it in, of course, just, you know, I really love this piece. I really love this piece. So, yeah, thank
Well,
Carol for donating it.
and just as a quick note, I hope she doesn't mind. I ran into her husband yesterday at the county building, and her mom is, I think, he said, in her 90s, and she's having some really serious issues with her eye, one of her eyes, and has to have like this major surgery. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. She's up in New York with her right now, and it was just kind of a fluke thing. I hadn't seen Frank in over a year, and he let me know that. So yeah, just keep them in your thoughts and prayers, please.
Absolutely.
But with this painting too, she's added, there's metallic copper and 24 karat gold in this painting. And depending on where you hang it during the day, like where I have it hung in the foundation office, it changes all day long the way the colors show up. It's really cool.
We can go on and on about this painting. Yeah, but yeah, it is.
So
it is a piece.
it's up for auction on the Bobby White Foundation Facebook page. I need to go in and change the picture on it because the one I have on there doesn't show this as vividly. But you can bid on it by putting your bid amount in the comments underneath the post, and we'll run it through the end of this month. So, and there's going to be a lot of exciting things going on in between now and next month. Can't really say yet, but there's going to be a lot of stuff going on.
Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned.
Yeah, really. And we want to thank John and Rob from WeBeam TV for giving us this time.
We couldn't do it without them.
For sure. So, and also, if you want to help support us not only with this auction, and we're going to have others coming up throughout the summer, you can go to our Kindest webpage, and there's multi-levels of donations that are available to help support us. It would be, much appreciated. So, and that's an easy way to support us too. And also, it's getting kind of late because by the time you see this, it's going to be Father's Day weekend. But also, Amazon Prime Day, I think, is June 21st. And so if you purchase a lot from Amazon, you can go to smile.amazon.com. You have to go through the smile.amazon, but it brings in your account automatically that way. And you can choose the Bobby White Foundation as your charity of choice. And that's a real passive way to donate. The metrics showed me how many times I've ordered in the past year, and I was like, oh my gosh. But that's an easy way to do it. So, like I said, too, Prime Day is June 21st, I believe.
I think it's 2 days, 21 and 22.
22, is it 2 days?
I believe it's 2
we'll
days.
have it. We'll have it also on the foundation Facebook page. So, it'll be an easy way to get there.
We mentioned, of course, the support, and thanks that we give to John and Rob for, this platform. We also couldn't do it without those of y'all who watch this on
That's
a
true.
weekly basis. We are always, grateful for those of y'all. I could name a few people who tune in and share every time the show airs. Not to mention, individuals who I didn't know that show existed. I didn't know you did that. Yes. And then, of course, they tune in and, oh my goodness, the lives that you were touching and the message. So again, we thank, those of you all that are tune in, to see us every week. We do appreciate
Oh,
that.
we definitely appreciate it. And we know sometimes it may be difficult to get through a whole show, but we we do really appreciate it a lot.
And that is true. I've
Just-
had people, say, I couldn't, I had something going on, and I couldn't watch this week. So I'm going to watch, next week. And we understand that, this is for some people can be a, difficult topic. We have those difficult conversations. And sometimes it gets, a little emotional for us. I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, is our next week's show? Is, what next Wednesday? Is it next Wednesday? Next Wednesday is Patrick's birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, June
Yeah.
16th. Am I ahead of myself? Am I?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, next week. Yeah,
next-
Wednesday
next
is Patrick's
Wednesday.
birthday. So yeah, Patrick's birthday, and then we tape. We film again. And I was like, okay, let's doing this. We
It's-
muddle through this.
It's hard, and kind of with us being able to share our difficult times, hopefully that helps you through your difficult times. You're not alone in this.
Well, we talk a lot on the mental health side of the spectrum where there's a lot of stigma around, mental health and grief and, things that we process through. And, for some of us, and I use the word us, loosely, but for some people it's difficult to talk about I'm struggling with something. I'm, whatever it is I'm dealing with, whether it is grief, whether it is loss, whether it is, substance misuse, whether it is, and I can, we can go down a list and list a bunch of things. What I find, with a platform like this and, other people that, we run into, as we do this, as we're in our specific lines of work, is being able to talk about it, being able to put a face on this is what's going on. And I hate to use the word normalize it, it makes it okay. We've shared, multiple times how oftentimes when I'm doing a presentation on, loss, whether it be a suicide loss or it's, a substance abuse loss, I play that interview that I did for, for TV. And I do not set it up. I don't introduce it like you're going to see an interview, and the interview is going to be me and whatnot. I just, tell people, I'm going to show you a, quick 5-minute clip, and we'll talk about it at the end. And I kind of sit back and play this clip. And, when it's all over, what do you guys notice? And, a lot of times, it's with my students, it's students that I work with. I will hear, that was you. Was that you? And I was like, yes, that was me. And the person that I was talking about was, of course, it was Patrick. And I'm always struck by how the atmosphere in the room changes, because, I will then say, now, who would have thought if I would have told you that this was my story to tell, would you have believed it? No. We hear about, struggles and, challenges that people face. And, people are like, oh, let's just talk. Oh, you're talking out of a book. That's not really real. Now we put a face on it. And, I feel putting a face on it, makes it like there's somebody just like me. Or in some cases, the last person that we thought would be dealing with something like that. It is real. This is, it's something to talk about. This isn't make-believe.
Well, and something like that happened to me yesterday or the day before. I had hung a couple of the foundation T-shirts in my studio where I work my I was like my real job in the gallery, and I had a client come in and pick up a piece that I had framed for her and her husband, and she saw the T-shirts and asked about them. So I told her, a little bit about my story. Well, come to find out, we ended up talking for like probably for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, she has a son who's 27 years old. He is a Marine. He's not in the Marines anymore. But he struggles very bad with PTSD and suicide ideation, and has on more than one occasion threatened suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in kind of an okay place right now, but she feels, and she just knows that, and he's not getting, the help that he needs, just like, we talked about when Tony was on the show, a few weeks ago. He's not getting the help that he needs when he needs it, and she kind of has, like, we talk through things, knows that if it happens, she's done everything that she can do. And it's like with us, you think, oh, if I would have done this or I would have done that, but I can't imagine being a mother having to struggle with that, knowing that it could be any time that you get that phone call, and she knows that it more likely than not could be something that happens. Mm-hmm. And it was just because I had the foundation T-shirts hanging there. She thought maybe I did the foundation for a child of mine, but I told her it was my husband. So fortunately, I had some pamphlets from AFSP for it's preventing suicide in military families. Mm-hmm. And so on the back of it had a whole bunch of resources for her, to help her out. So, and I told her about our purple folder, and just let her know that that's what we're here for. If nothing happens, that's great. We're still here for you. Mm-hmm. If something happens, we're still here for you. And it was just kind of a random thing. They'd been in the gallery a couple times, and I hadn't had the T-shirts, and just for some reason, I just decided to hang them in there, and it brought about the conversation.
They say things happen for a reason. We do things, and without considering this is going to be the result, and it's like something said,
right,
hang those T-shirts.
Yeah, it just was out of the blue. I was like, oh, I really should do that, and hopefully, it comfort her in some way to know that, like I said, she's not alone in this, but I can't imagine being a mother knowing that, this is happening. He's not getting the help that he needs, and it's taking too long. Mm-hmm. They're coming up with, there's all these other things that he has to do, and if they would just work on the underlying problem, what the problem actually is, then all these other little things that they're picking at would fall into place, hopefully.
It's difficult as a veteran, having, sometimes the resources are not there. Sometimes I feel that either the focus is elsewhere, or there's so much focus, but there's not enough, professionals to meet the demand of all of us vets who are struggling, or maybe struggling. I recall in my own journey, seeing someone, and sometimes I had to wait a month before I can see her. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved her. She's since retired. And when she told me she was retiring, I was like, who gave you permission? But no, she was wonderful, Dr. Karen Moorhead. But I remember, I had her on speed dial. I mean, I could call at any time and say, hey, I'm struggling with something. And, thankfully the relationship, 'cause I've worked with her for, years, just, prior, some other stuff. But I remember, her saying, I'm here, and she would, call me, like at the end of the day or afterwards, hey, Bonnie called you to school. But to get in to see her, on a regular basis, was often difficult because she was so booked. At the same time, she was also, like in charge of the department. So you've got these department head responsibilities, which, well, now that I have these responsibilities, they're taking away some of the time that I have that I could spend with clients, with patients.
Right.
And so, I mean, so they developed, like the vet center, which is kind of, it is the VA, but it's not, it's weird, I don't want to say weird, where, there's an ability for you to perhaps get in and see somebody sooner. At the same time, I think of my own experience, the turnover. Sometimes so you start working with somebody and then I'm leaving, I'm, being reassigned over here. And it's like, all right, let's start building rapport with somebody else. And that in itself can be a setback, to processing through, grief or loss or whatever mental health, issue you're going through. And I would say the same for, our, civilian counterparts. Finding someone that you connect with, finding somebody who's available, finding somebody who's affordable.
That's one of from what I hear and experience is one of the major issues is the affordability. It seems to be one of the biggest roadblocks besides availability to people getting the help that they really need. And finding the right person too, because you have those three, and finding the right person, the person you may go to at first may not be the right fit, and you can't let that stop you thinking that, oh, this isn't going to work. You just need to find that right person.
Oh yeah.
That happened to me years ago when my first husband died. The gentleman, I'll say loosely, that I went to, it was not. And I have since let that be a roadblock to me to seek out anybody else, because
unfortunately that
happens a lot. And I was fairly young. I was 26 years old, but and now that's young. I wasn't young then. But it has, and a couple of people have called me out on it, but throughout my life, and especially now, it's still, that's what I go back to, and I'm like, I don't know, and it happens probably more often than not.
Oh, I can agree. I mean, I remember, as I was going through, my schooling and my training, where, we, talked about, developing rapport with, the people that we work with, doing, mock interviews, critiquing. My first year of the doctor program, we were doing, clinical interviewing of, how do we do this? And we had to transcribe verbatim our interview. And when I say transcribe verbatim, it was every
Really?
had to be in the transcription. And so, of course, as we're, in a 90-minute interview, it took about 18 hours to transcribe. And like I said, anything that came out of my mouth, regardless of what it was, had to be in this transcription. And so the purpose for it was, as we're going through, we are, we were instructed to critique the interview. And so much so, like, part of the assignment was identify, I want to say it was five questions that you think you could have done better. Identify 5 times, questions that you were right on point. And as I'm doing this, it was very eye-opening for me, because it was like, wow, you really, it really forces you to focus on, presentation. When I'm talking to somebody, it's important that I connect with that person. When I fast forward to, after losing Patrick and, going down that really dark place, like, I was not in a good spot, not at all. And especially, being on the heels of Aiden, I was like, Aiden,
Oh,
now
yeah.
Patrick. But I remember, being, I was at the VA, and someone had, suggested, we're going to connect you with someone. And I remember walking into this woman's office, for a second. My first thoughts, looking at her, and she's, considerably younger than I. And my, I was like, do I really want to be there? My head space was, I want to be here, but I don't want to be here. I'm too depressed to deal with this, but I'm so depressed that I need to deal with this, but I'm too depressed to deal with it. So I was in that, I don't know if I really want to do this. And we started talking. And I looked at her when it was all said and done. There's a couple of things that she said during our initial conversation, and I forget what it was. But I looked at her and I said, I think this is going to work. And she was like, what? And I was like, I don't know what it is about you, but I think this is going to work. I think this is going to work. And I sing her praises a lot. Dr. Nikki Gravel, where I'm like, it's like, what do I call you? And she goes, you call me Nikki. And I was like, oh, okay, well, first name basis here. But she's very personable.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other, I told them we were on this. They helped me, and they were like, oh no, Bonnie, you were driving this train. And I looked at him from the other person, her name was Brianna Anderson, who was my nurse practitioner. And I remember, telling Brianna, I was like, all right, I'm gonna let you I'm gonna let you have that. I can agree. But we look at this journey, as I look at this journey, as I was the bus driver. And when you're driving a bus, the success of that journey is absolutely dependent upon the people that you have on the bus with you. And I was like, so, having, Nikki, and Brianna, which, I got a call the other day, a follow-up call. Brianna's left, and I was like, who told her to leave? So I got to, reconnect with somebody else.
Right.
But anyway, that's another whole other, that's an aside. But, as we, Stephanie Jose touches on it in the book, where she talks about, finding support, whether it is a support group, whether it is, a counselor, whether it is, a friend, somebody who's gone through it as well. That can be very, what's the word I want? Refreshing. It can, it's really helpful, as we're going through this journey to have somebody that you connect with. Because I sit back and I wonder if Nikki had not been, had the personality or been the person that she was, I could see myself going, you know what? Would I've ever, been able to pull myself up from, I mean, I was at rock bottom, to where, absolutely 100% not functioning at all, to, okay, I'm functioning. I don't know that I'll ever be 100%, but at the same time, I can be, and let's just, if I put a percentage on it, I could be at 50%, but operate like I'm at 100, So yeah, it is important, having those connections, having that rapport, taking the stigma out of, what this is.
Well, yeah, and letting people be free and open to be able to talk about it. Because, like with the conversation with my client the other day, that would have never happened. And people need, they need to know. And like you had mentioned a little while ago when with the interview and the kids, how you could feel the atmosphere in the room change. When I first started speaking publicly about my story, as soon as they realized what I was talking about, immediately you could feel the change.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a good way, because most people didn't want to hear it or were afraid to hear it, possibly. But afterwards, every single time I have spoken publicly at, some meeting or organization, at least one person comes up to me and thanks me for sharing, because and then they could share with me. And one gentleman, he hadn't talked about it was his son in like over 15 years. And he was grateful, so that kind of makes what we're doing. We're helping other people, but in turn, it helps us tremendously.
Oh, it does.
It
does.
To have that and be able to do that for other people.
Because when we think about how, loss and everything affects us, going back to the book for a second, where, she talks about punishing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I read that, that particular paragraph in the book, I'm like, Miss Jose, are you talking to me? Miss Jose, you're talking to me.
And a lot of us, especially with suicide deaths or overdoses, whether it be drugs or alcohol, I think we automatically do that because it goes back to, what if I would have done this? What, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and I don't know if it's just something that's in our nature, the way that, society is, or the way we are. It seems like, automatic. And my client, she has to struggle with, knowing that this is a very real reality, but having to learn that she's doing what she can do. And if somebody is going to carry out that act, in most cases, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to be the one to stop them.
And
and you can't punish yourself.
You can't, however, we do hit on something that as humans, we find ourselves doing that almost automatically. I know I struggle with it sometimes. It's that human. This affected me personal side of it that does the, and what about this, and I could have did this, and why didn't I do this and this, and then there's that professional side of me that says stop it, stop, like why are you can't think, why are you thinking like that, and of course this side wants to tell this side hush, like hush, like this makes no sense, like you're not making any sense. But at the same time, it comes back to where, but you are, because I think back, with, going back to Aiden, for example, how, we, as a family, we talk about what if the friends, would have, I don't want to say especially, because I'm reluctant to say especially, the girlfriend, because I don't want to, I don't want to create the illusion that this is put on her shoulders.
Right,
'Cause
right.
it's not. What if she would have showed that picture to her mom? Would her mom, that we're thinking, would have prompted her mom to alert, Kira, you need to check on Aiden. At the same time, and of course, I don't want to say, that other side of it says, well, what if, I'm just going to use her time. What if she got the picture, say at 10 o'clock, and she showed it to her mom, and her mom reached out to Kira at 10:05? Did that mean that Kira would have found Aiden right after it happened, instead of finding him the next morning when she was, getting him ready for school, when we thought he was getting up ready for school? Would that 5 minutes have even made a difference? Part of us sits back, and again, we're like, did he really mean to do, was this just a,
Like lashing out.
I don't know what I want to call it, lashing out, more of a, was it attention seeking? Was it horrible stunt, a stunt going horribly bad? And I hate to use the word stunt, because that in turn evokes that, stigma that surrounds, mental health and suicide, because, well, this wasn't a stunt. Obviously he was in pain, and this is what he felt was his only way out, or his way to address it. But we do the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. What if we would have checked on him more? He's 14.
Mm-hmm.
Goes and checks on a 14-year-old after they go to bed. What if, or I think with Pat, what if my high school reunion did not, take place that weekend? What if my car had not been in the shop? What if Devin would have been home instead of with my daughter? What if, we would have forced him into rehab before I left versus we'll take care of it after, that left, what if, I would have been more forceful in the fact that, okay, you're a 33-year-old, guy. Yes, I'm your mom, but how much, control do I have over you? You're 32, you're 33. Okay, we live in the same house. You're still an adult, like, kids of your own. How does this work? So yeah, we tend to, beat ourselves up and, get stuck. We call them stuck points on the coulda, shoulda, woulda. This is my fault. I could have done. Why did I do something different?
I do the same thing. It's like, what if I didn't leave to go get the truck fixed?
Mm-hmm.
I was only gone for 2 hours. That's all. And one of my sister-in-laws, she was going to stop by that morning. and that's her thing too, is why didn't I stop by? You know, I went through the light and forgot, oh, I'll go by late at another time, you know. And yeah, it's what we do. But one of the hardest things is to tell ourselves too that it wouldn't have mattered. In reality, it probably wouldn't have mattered.
I mean, it's like Carl said, you know, would we have prolonged it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, would it's, you know, we may have stopped it that day. Did we stop it for a day? Did we stop it for a year? Did we stop it for, 10 years?
Well, and that has been said about Bobby too. You know, if we would have stopped it that day, it probably would have happened another day. And it's a hard thing to live with. It really is. But, you know, she says here that you know, you just try not to blame yourself for the loss. And she also says, which is really good, and we have most of the people that volunteer for our foundation, not all, but most of them have had somebody that they have lost to suicide. And that's a way of helping yourself, you know, especially when if you're feeling that, you know, I should have done more. Well, yeah, maybe, but you know, that's really not, now you can, you know. And like I said, almost everybody who volunteers for the foundation has had a suicide loss.
You know, it's important, too, that we recognize while we're doing, this work, whether it's, volunteering or being out in the field, or, at the foundation, that we're in tune to those things that would trigger us as well.
Oh, I have to be very careful.
Yeah, I mean, I think of, I sit back and I think of, for instance, there are certain times of the year now that I am hypervigilant when it comes to what my emotional state is. Like I know, February, the 8th, I got it right this time, the 8th, and then Valentine's Day, the 8th, I'll always be like, he would, it's no longer, he is a particular age now as he would have.
Right.
And when I'm thinking, he would be getting his driver's license right now. He would be going into, what are 16-year-olds? Is that a sophomore in high school? Junior, sophomore?
Yeah, some sophomore,
yes.
I think.
Yes.
Or it could be a junior.
Sophomore, junior, yeah. But he would be, he would be in high school right now.
Right.
Or, as I'm, looking at, next week with, what would his children, have looked like? The conversation with Carl right now. I'm not ready to be a great nana by any stretch of the imagination. Although the two older ones are in their 20s now, and it's like, okay, you're age enough to be parents, but no, let's not just yet. We think about, with Carl, you get a couple of your kids that are like, no kids, not happening. Just like, you're not getting kids for me. So, what we do think about, what would his kids, what would his children have looked like? We won't get children from him.
Right.
We won't see him, we won't see him graduate. I won't hear, about, the fender benders, and I say that, lovingly and jokingly. I was thinking of Trent, his brother, Trent wrecked his car. Really? What was he doing? Oh, he was being a boy, not watch, him not being able to have him see his little sister, grow up like he has. Carl and I were talking about this when I was in the Midwest last month, how bricks will not be able to experience the two people um, who were, very similar in some ways. Like she won't meet her goofy, comedic uncle, and she won't she won't experience the love that her brother would have given her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh, so yeah, I find myself getting snippy around, February. I find myself getting snippy, or I'm going into that brain fog, this time of, coming,
Well,
next week.
with Patrick's birthday coming up, it happens to me too. April, and I've learned, and it's taken me a while to learn this, that I just kind of have to take the month of April off.
Mhm.
But no matter what I try and do, it doesn't work. And then in August is my birthday, but my birthday is also our wedding anniversary. And then in November, and November's going to try and get tricky. Usually from like September through the end of the year gets kind of weird for me, because we used to, when we were in person, we had Art for Hope in September.
Mhm.
Then the Out of the Darkness Walk was in October. Bobby's birthday was in November. Suicide Lost Survivors Day is in November. Well, when we start getting back to things, we're beginning to change when Art for Hope is. It's still going to be virtual this year. Actually, a lot of it's going to be here on our show
Okay.
from September to November. But when we get back into having our in-person event, we're going to move it to November, because we have this really awesome outside venue that we booked for it, and it'll be our 5th anniversary for Art for Hope. That whole entire month will be every weekend. November 5th will be Art for Hope. The next weekend is is the prevention walk.
Mhm.
And then the next weekend is Suicide Lost Survivors Day. And Bobby's birthday.
Mm.
So, but, she says in here too, and which makes sense, and I think that's what I did. This is what I did with coming to this realization, especially for April, was engaging in your triggers,
Mhm.
not allowing them to control you.
Mhm.
You have to learn to control them.
Right. Absolutely, which is why, like I remember, whenever we're taking time off, because we're a supervisor now, and I just remember, shooting my supervisor a text and an email, the other day. It's like, it just says, FYI, I'm going to take off June 16th. That's Patrick's birthday, and I know I'm not going to be. I'm going to want to be around anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And she emailed me back, and it's funny because we'll be sitting in the office. My office is here. Hers is like 2 doors over. But she said back, I was going to ask you about that, and she said, I understand completely, I just want to let you know that, you're in my thoughts. And, what I like about my supervisor, she will, on, certain events that is going on, whether it's, I'm, it's, Aiden's birthday, or it's, Aiden's lost day, or Pat's birthday, Pat's lost day. Like, Patrick's lost day, I usually tend to take that whole week off. But I'm here, just want to let you know, I'll be thinking about you, you'll get through this, it's okay. So yeah, she makes, a very good point about not allowing your triggers to control you. Embrace them. So it's like you recognize this anniversary is going to, this date is triggering for you. Or sometimes it is this particular, a TV show or a smell or a, something else. Like, I watched, Devin, for example, will do things and I'm like, he's so much like his dad, and I, allow myself to process that and that there's still, there's still a part of him that is still here. But then, watching, like our favorite movie, we and I would watch together, House on Haunted Hill, the old one, Vincent Price one. And I find myself, reciting our favorite line from that particular movie. And I'm like, if only Pat were here to watch, to watch this. Or on my social media page, the things pop up. Of late, it's been him. So yeah, it's important, again, that, like you said, I can go do the, oh my gosh, and fall apart, and just let myself be consumed by that grief. Or, I choose to, yes, son, you're still here with me. I miss you. I miss your physical presence. But I'm glad, I have, your, spiritual, non-physical presence.
Well, and it may sound kind of weird, but it's true. Is you have to embrace it.
Yes.
You do. At first, and maybe for a while, that may be sound like, yeah, right. There's just no way, but eventually, you will get there. You will get there, and you won't get there alone. Ideally, you really need to reach out to friends or family that are supportive, and that's the key, is they need to be supportive.
Yeah, and I mean, not just friends and family who are, supportive. I mean, it is important, as you're going through, whether it is this journey or, any difficult periods in your life, whether it is, being a loss survivor, divorce, sickness,
Loss of job,
right, any traumatic
life
situation,
event.
life event, which I'm liking, as we're talking about how traumatic life events affect us. Because I'm going to use that as a little segue. We got a guest coming on here in the next couple of weeks. It's was going to touch on that very subject. But yeah, it is important that you have a very strong and reliable support system, whether it is friends and family, whether it is support groups, therapists,
Spiritual counselors, life coach.
yes, wherever you get that support from.
Exactly. Yeah, it's your grief is normal.
Yeah.
And reach out for that support. And we were gonna get into the next part of this chapter, but we're gonna save it for the next show. Emotions and reactions, and it is a different way to look at the cycles that you go through and what you deal with as you're going through your grief. And like we said, it doesn't have to be a suicide death. It doesn't have to be losing someone to an overdose. It's applicable to any life traumatic event. So if you want to follow along with us with this book, Progressing Through Grief, it is available on Amazon, and again, smile.amazon.com. And you can go through this with us. It's very good. It has areas in the book where you're actually kind of active or interactive with it. So that's a good thing.
And like Tammy said, we will be going into our part 2 next week. But as we always, do in closing, we want to, always thank, Rob and John here at WeBeam TV for giving us this platform. We want to thank, those, you guys, our viewers, for tuning in. We appreciate the support that you give us, and remind you to, if you're able, to go to our donation sites, whether it's the kindness, whether it is directly to the foundation, our amazing T-shirts.
Yes, we haven't mentioned those
And,
yet.
of course, this, beautiful piece right here. Again, I say, guys, let the bidding begin. So, but yeah,
Yeah, the T-shirts are available either via our website or we do have some inventory at the foundation office if you're local here. Um, and Gulfside Custom T-shirts will ship you a T-shirt anywhere your heart desires. So, yeah, we want to thank everyone again. And yeah, would you love to have this painting in your house? You're going to have a bidding war with Bonnie. Kind of looks good in my foundation office. But if anybody is in distress, and you know somebody that you may be worried about, please put, especially the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. Please put that in your phone. You just never know when somebody may be needing it. And always remember, there's always hope. And thank you so much for joining us this week.